I always thought I knew how to sleep. I mean, you just lay down, close your eyes and wake up, right? Yeah, it turns out it's not that simple. Actually, playing video games till 3 am and waking up 8 hours later was one of the reasons why I didn't have the energy in the morning. I mean, I was sleeping for 8 hours, so I should be good, right? No, sleep doesn't work that way. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. In this video, I'll be giving you 7 tips on how you can upgrade the quality of it. Most of us view sleep as a no-brainer, so we scrape by with as little as possible. But sleep can make you lose weight faster, prevent cancer, decrease pain, perform at a high level and have more energy throughout the day. Here are some consequences that will follow if you don't pay attention to your sleep. First, you're grumpy and not found to be around. Relationships suffer, work productivity declines. You suffer higher amounts of stress and that makes you eat more and store more belly fat. So you're more likely to become obese, get cancer or get depressed. Most people don't realize their sleep problems are also a catalyst for other problems they're experiencing in life. So, upgrading your sleep should be high on your priority list. Let me give you my first tip. Get more sunlight during the day. A great night's sleep begins the moment you wake up in the morning. Your sleep cycle or your circadian rhythm is heavily impacted by the amount of sunlight you receive during the day. That sunlight exposure triggers your body to produce optimal levels of daytime hormones that regulate your biological clock. Getting direct sunlight outdoors for at least half an hour has been shown to produce the most benefit. Too little light during the day and too much artificial in the evening will negatively impact your sleep at night. Which brings us to my second tip. Avoid screens before bedtime. I really wish someone told me this sooner. Cutting out screen time at night is likely the number one thing you can do to improve your sleep quality immediately. Computers, iPads, TVs, smartphones all emit blue light that can give you major sleep problems. That blue light disorients your body's natural preparation for sleep. And I know a lot of people that watch TV before bed. It may seem like a relaxing and mundane activity to sit back and watch TV, but parts of your brain are being set off like fireworks. You're actually putting a stressor on your brain and body, especially if it's time to be winding down for bed. So, breaking the habit of using your electronic devices before bed can be a bit demanding, but also one that's worth mastering. Replace your devices with an activity that you enjoy equally. For example, reading, music, good company, whatever fits you best. If you have to use a computer late at night, use a blue light blocker. There's a program called Flux that you can install and it turns your computer screen slightly more orange. I also recommend using blue light blocking glasses. I use them myself when I have work to do at night. Please note that even if you block all the blue light, your brain is still firing in all directions instead of shutting down for sleep. So, tip number 3, be cool. When it's time to rest, there is an automatic drop in body temperature, which has a big impact on our ability to sleep. So, optimal room temperature is 60 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 16 to 20 Celsius. Anything above or below will likely cause sleep problems. So, here's a cool trick. Take a warm bath 1.5 to 2 hours before going to bed. This may sound counterintuitive, but while your core temperature will increase from the bath, it will fall accordingly and level out a little cooler. Even though the room temperature will ideally be cooler to induce great sleep, this can trigger sleeplessness in some people. The solution? Wear a pair of warm socks to bed. So test out and find out what works best for you. Tip number 4. Go to bed at the right time. Most human beings get the most beneficial hormonal secretions and recovery by sleeping during hours of 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Sean Stevenson calls that money time. You get the most rejuvenating effects during this period. If your body is chronically deprived of the regenerative sleep between those times, then you may still be fatigued when you wake up in the morning. A study published in the International Journal of Cancer found that women who worked the overnight shift had 30% higher incidence of breast cancer. So make sure you go to the bed at the right time. To help reset your sleep cycle so that you're actually tired when the optimal bedtime rolls around, make a habit of getting some sunlight as soon as you jump out of the bed in the morning. This is going to help you boost your natural cortisol levels and fully wake your system up. Tip number 5. Create a sleep sanctuary. Your bedroom should only be used for sleep and, well, sex. Humans are creatures of habit and habitat. The human brain is always looking for patterns so that it can automate your behavior. After a while, you don't have to think what you have to do when you go to a different room in your home. You just go in there and do it. If you allow your bedroom to be a place where a lot of random activities take place, then you probably aren't creating a strong neural association to sleep. When you step into your bedroom, parts of your brain might light up expecting to watch television, do work on your laptop, or scroll through social media. Your brain is going to do what it's used to, not what you want to do. One big takeaway should be this: bringing your office work or free time to bed is one of the most offensive sleep crimes you can commit. So, tip number 6, get it blacked out. Did you know that your skin actually has receptors that can pick up light? If there's light in your bedroom, your body is picking it up and sending messages to your brain that can interfere with your sleep. Red light has the least power to shift your circadian rhythm and suppress melatonin. That's why it's recommended to use red light bulbs at night. It's not just about the color of the light, it's about the luminance as well. So if you have an option, try to dim the light out a bit. So when you go to sleep, make sure there isn't any light in the room. You shouldn't even be able to see your hand in front of you, that's how dark it has to be. So tip number 7, my last tip. Calm your inner chatter. There's a great quote that says, "My bed is a magical place where I suddenly remember everything I was supposed to do." People hop into bed and then proceed to think about the when, where, who, why, what, and how of their life, while they were supposed to be sleeping. Sounds familiar? This is called the inner chatter, and it's a result of stress and untamed busyness of the day. It's important to have a practice to help you buffer that stress. That practice is called meditation. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine published research showing that meditation is an effective treatment to insomnia. The studies show that over a 2-month period, total sleep time, sleep efficiency, sleep quality, and even depression improved in patients who used meditation. There is a ton of data about beneficial impact of meditation on work performance, productivity, memory, and focus, but that's for another video. So, don't forget to take advantage of this valuable resource today. Alright, thank you for listening. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. And as always, don't forget to be better than yesterday. There's this one financial mistake I see people making all the time. Anyone can make it, and often they don't even realize they're making it before it's too late. And it doesn't matter if they're earning $10,000 or $10 million per year. This mistake can keep people poor forever. And even if they're wealthy, it has the power to make them broke. So, what is that mistake? It's falling prey to lifestyle inflation. It's best I try to explain what that is through a concrete example. This is Mike. Mike currently works at a job where he makes $30,000 per year. He spends roughly $25,000 to cover his essential expenses, which are food, housing costs, his car and gas, insurance, etc. Things that are essential and are needed to live a normal life. And the leftover $5,000 he spends on vacations, gifts, new clothes, and other non-essential stuff. Things that are nice to have and experience, but are not required to sustain himself. Luxuries, basically. That's how Mike allocates all of his annual income. He doesn't save or invest, since he doesn't have any money left over at the end of the month. But then Mike gets a promotion and a raise at his current job. He is now making $45,000 per year. That's $15,000 more annually. Finally, Mike will have some money left over at the end of the month which he can save and invest. So, what does he do with that extra money? As his income increased, his standard of living also increased.
Mike now feels like he deserves a better, fancier, and more expensive car, which he decides to buy. He can now afford to move to a bigger apartment, and that also means higher housing costs. Making more money also means being able to afford more exotic vacations. And he can now afford to eat regularly at fancy restaurants or just use food delivery services. But at the end of the year, Mike breaks even and again basically has no money saved, just like before. This phenomenon is what we call lifestyle inflation. It usually happens when you start making more money, but you also end up spending more money. Instead of maintaining the same lifestyle, you upgrade it. Things that were once luxuries become necessities. Instead of saving or investing the extra money, you now need more money to maintain your life. And just like Mike, this is something a lot of people fall for. 78% of American workers are living paycheck to paycheck, and more than 58% have less than $1,000 in savings. At a first glance, this might not seem like that big of a deal. People can choose to spend their money however they like. But when an emergency comes up or an unexpected expense, this can be extremely problematic. Mike is perfectly healthy right now and there's nothing holding his lifestyle back. But what if he gets into a car accident where he's injured badly? Suddenly he doesn't have to cover just his living expenses, but medical bills as well. And what if Mike loses his job? A similar problem occurs. His living expenses stay the same, but he doesn't have the necessary income to cover them. This is why Mike should keep his lifestyle the same and save the money instead of spending it. One might argue that Mike should just try to make even more money. Then he could keep his new lifestyle and save the rest. It's true that the more money you make, the easier it is to save more of it. But it has to be noted that not even rich people are safe from lifestyle inflation. Many former athletes file for bankruptcy just a few years after retiring. Whether it's NFL or NBA players, they often suffer financial stress. Yes, those athletes were making millions and they did save a lot of money. But because they kept the same luxurious lifestyles, even after their income stopped coming in, they ended up broke. Higher income doesn't necessarily translate to financial security. Good financial habits do. Another stereotypical example is lottery winners. After they receive that massive amount of money, in a few years they usually end up right where they started. Instead of controlling their spending and being set for life financially, they make bad financial decisions and they end up broke. So what good does it do if someone makes $1 million per year, but their lifestyle requires them to spend the whole $1 million? Being rich isn't just about how much money you make, but also about how much money you can keep. And don't fall for society's illusion of wealth. Some people might seem wealthy because they spend so much money on trying to look rich. But just because someone wears $5,000 worth of clothes or drives a sports car, it doesn't mean they're wealthy. A lot of those people are struggling financially and just waste their money on expensive brand items. That's just the society we live in right now. We put a lot of value on things that we can show to other people. So it's not completely your fault if you fall prey to lifestyle inflation. Your lifestyle habits come from your friends, social media, and the culture you're a part of. And if you look around, most people are living an extravagant lifestyle. So you might feel like you're expected to do so as well, since it's normal because everyone else is doing it. But remember that quote-unquote normal in this case means being broke and living paycheck to paycheck. So what can you do to avoid lifestyle inflation? Knowing about it and acknowledging it is half the battle. If you understand that it's something that can happen to you, you're probably going to spot it if it does. The other half is being self-disciplined. Before spending money on anything, you should sleep on the decision and really ask yourself if it's going to improve your life in any way. A lot of our buying decisions these days are impulsive and done mindlessly. Do you really need a brand new iPhone every single year? What's wrong with the current one? And do you really need to get a $600 watch just because you can afford it? Again, what's wrong with the $60 one? They both show at the same time. Stop wasting money on things that don't bring you any long-term benefits just because you have some money to spare right now. There will always be something that you can splurge the money on. After all, it's very easy to spend it. Making money, however, is a little harder. So whenever your income or salary increases, so should the amount of money you save and invest. Your income is never guaranteed, that's why it's a necessity to live within your means while putting money away for the unexpected. People with a higher income might have an easier time saving, but if they just splurge, they can easily end up broke. And people with a lower income can still save money if they just budget carefully. They need to figure out what amount of money is enough to fund their lifestyle, and then they must not spend more than necessary. Now, I'm not saying that you should only save money, far from it. There's no point in saving every penny while being completely miserable as a result. Instead, I'm only suggesting that you live within your means and when your income increases, you keep a similar lifestyle. The money that you do spend should be spent on things that you enjoy and that benefit your life. If you think having a Lamborghini is what truly matters to you, go ahead and get it. As long as you don't go into debt for it and it's not to impress others or just for the sake of spending. And be sure to keep in mind that it requires expensive maintenance. I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite quotes from Fight Club. We buy things we don't need, with money we don't have, to impress people we don't like. Are you going to be one of those people who falls for lifestyle inflation? Or are you going to rise above it? The choice is yours. Thanks for watching. Does money buy happiness? Can more money make us happier? The answer to these questions is yes and no. It depends really. In this video, I'll examine the relationship between money and happiness, and hopefully you'll be able to answer those questions for yourself. A lot of people go through life chasing money, and it makes perfect sense why. Money is what's needed to provide us with food, clothing, medical care, and a roof over our heads. If you don't have any money, you're unable to fulfill those basic needs. And when we don't have those essentials sorted out, we probably won't feel too happy. This is why not having any money is a great predictor of unhappiness. So in this case, getting our hands on some money will definitely bring us joy, as it would allow us to buy the necessities for a normal life. Now, you don't have to be living on the streets for money to make you happier. Living paycheck to paycheck and constantly worrying if you're going to be able to pay your bills and make it through the month has been shown to cause a lot of stress. Also, being thousands of dollars in debt and not knowing how you'll pay it off has been linked to depression, anxiety, hopelessness, and a lower life evaluation. Money would again make you happier in this case, as there would be one less thing to constantly worry about. A huge mental burden would lift and you would have a peace of mind. But when it comes to income, how much money should someone be making in order to maximize their happiness? In most cases, someone who makes $50,000 per year will be happier than someone who makes $25,000. Therefore, it would make sense to assume that $100,000 per year is going to make them even happier, right? Well, not quite. Above a certain point, making more money doesn't equal more happiness. Someone who makes $100,000 per year isn't much happier than the person who makes $50,000. Back in 2010, a study published by Daniel Kahneman had shown that in North America, making more than $75,000 per year didn't improve day-to-day happiness. Money certainly helps with overall well-being up to a certain point, but once you're sitting comfortably in middle class, more money probably won't make your average day any happier. Of course, it has to be noted that 75,000 is the average number, and depending on where you live, this number will be higher or lower. If you live somewhere expensive, such as San Francisco, more money will be needed to satisfy your needs. But if you live somewhere much cheaper, making $30,000 could already be enough. Another thing that you shouldn't forget is that this study was done in 2010 and the dollar has lost some of its value due to inflation. So as more time passes, this number will only get higher and higher. Now, the same study found that while making more than $75,000 annually won't bring you any additional day-to-day happiness, it does bring higher life evaluation. This means that when people are reflecting on their lives, those who manage to make more money tend to be more satisfied with how their life has turned out, even past the $75,000 mark. And one of the reasons for this might be due to social comparison. Play along with me here for a minute. Let's say you've applied for a job at Better Than Yesterday Incorporated. They have 3 different positions you could fill, positions A, B, and C, and all of them come with different salaries. In position A, you would be making $40,000 annually, while your colleagues would be making $20,000. In position B, your salary would be $50,000 and everyone else around you would also be making that exact number. But in position C, you would earn $60,000, however, everyone else in that department would be making $120,000. In order to maximize your happiness, which salary would you pick? If you were to choose position C, you would make a mistake. While you would be making the biggest amount of money, this choice would bring you the least amount of happiness. If you wanted to maximize your happiness, the correct choice would be A. Relative to your colleagues, you would be doing better than them. When it comes to money or achievement, part of the satisfaction comes from the fact that not everyone can match you. It might sound petty, but it's just human nature. We love to compare how we stack up relative to other people. Take for example getting a B on a test. If everyone else got a C or lower, you would feel great because compared to others, you did very well. But if you got a B and everyone else got an A, you obviously wouldn't feel too happy because everyone else did better while you did the worst. Even if you got the exact same grade in both cases. How happy we are with the amount of money we earn is relative to the amount of money people around us are making. Of course, this also means that if someone is making $1 million per year, but all their friends are making $5 million, they could be quite unhappy with their earnings. In their mind, they could feel like quote-unquote losers, because their peer group is doing better than them, even if they're actually in the top 1% of earners. However, nowadays with social media at our fingertips, we're not just comparing ourselves to our friends and colleagues anymore, we're comparing ourselves with the entire world. While other rich people could serve as an inspiration, they can also make us feel inferior. If that's the case for you, you might want to take a break from social media, as this type of comparison could be a major source of unhappiness. Just something to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to grades, the maximum you can attain is an A+, and there isn't anything higher. So if you attain that grade, you would feel pretty good. But when it comes to money, there is no upper limit. You could always be earning more. For this exact reason, we're always going to want more money no matter how much we're currently making. When different individuals are asked about what their perfect salary would be, the answer is pretty much the same. It's always more than the amount they are currently making. Those who make $30,000 per year would say that $50,000 would be their perfect income. Whereas those who earn more than $100,000 say they would need $250,000 to be satisfied. And even if those individuals were to attain their desired salaries and wealth, their desires would only increase. When it comes to money, we are never really going to be quite satisfied. But why do we feel like we always need just a little more? Well, it's because of a concept called hedonic adaptation. Let's say you're currently making $30,000 per year, but then you get hired at another job that pays you $50,000. How would you feel? Pretty good, right? Now the mistake would be to assume that you're going to feel that way forever. While your happiness would definitely spike up, it would only last a short time. Over the course of the next few months, you would get accustomed to this new income. Essentially, your new wealth would become your new normal, and you would need to get a raise or a better paying job to feel happier again. Until of course you get used to it again, just like before. Interestingly enough, a lot of people don't know that this type of adaptation will even take place. Perhaps it's because it happens so gradually that we don't usually notice it. For example, we experience the same type of unnoticed adaptation with temperature. Imagine you're out on a hot summer's day, but then you enter your air-conditioned house. The air feels very cold compared to the heat outside. However, as you spend more time in the house, you get so accustomed to the air conditioning that you don't even notice that it's there. What was fresh and cold before now feels like a normal temperature because you've adapted to it. And the exact same thing happens when you acquire money or other material possessions. When you buy a new fancy sports car, sure, you'll feel great about it for a few weeks, but that feeling of novelty will fade away. Your new car might be better than the last one, but you won't feel as excited about driving it like you were on the first day. The same happens when you buy a bigger house. You'll feel great about your purchase until of course this new house becomes your new normal and you start dreaming about an even bigger house with a better view. Make no mistake, objectively you will live better,
But you won't feel better about how you live. Every single time you will adapt and feel like you could use a slightly better car, a bigger house, and a little more money. Contrary to popular belief, money and material possessions don't bring us lots of happiness for a long time, but rather they bring us a little happiness until we adapt and feel like we deserve better. However, this sort of adaptation isn't negative. If you're not as fortunate in your life, adaptation is great. Imagine that you found yourself in a car accident that confined you to a wheelchair for the rest of your life. You would feel pretty horrible, right? Well, not so fast. A classic study compared the happiness levels of lottery winners and paraplegics. Interestingly enough, 1 year after their life-changing events, their happiness levels were not that far apart. There is no doubt that if you were to ask the lottery winners how they felt at the moment they won, they would say that their happiness levels were off the charts. And if you were to ask those who were in the accident how they felt at that moment, you would find out that their score would be as low as possible. But as time passed, both the lottery winners and the paraplegics got used to their new circumstances, and their happiness returned to roughly the same point it was before their life-changing events. But make no mistake, the lottery winners were still happier than the accident victims, just not by as much as one would think. So as you can see, if you're not as fortunate, adaptation is very useful. However, that same study found that those who win the lottery face a different problem. A lot of them now have a diminished ability to appreciate the small things in life. Things like a freshly brewed coffee in the morning or a lovely sunset just aren't as enjoyable any longer. This happens because the lottery winners often rush to spend their money on the best things life has to offer, and their standards suddenly increase. When you get to experience the best, what was previously considered good isn't good any longer. Instead, it's considered suboptimal. Your new standard is only the best. You can also think of it this way. If the first car you buy is a $500,000 Ferrari, how would you feel about driving a $50,000 BMW? Probably not that great. Your expectations would be set so high that everything below a $500,000 car would be seen as a downgrade. And this is exactly what lottery winners experience. So if you ever get your hands on a lot of money, don't rush to spend it if you care about your happiness. Otherwise, you will quickly raise your expectations to such a high level that whatever brought you joy before now won't. Or at least it's going to be in lower amounts. But how should we spend our money so that we can get the most happiness out of it? One way is to spend it on experiences. Things like a romantic meal with your partner, a trip to an adrenaline park, or attending a concert. We don't really adapt to these types of experiences because they're usually short. You can't get accustomed to a one-time concert after all. But keep in mind that if you start dining out every day, then it's not considered an experience any longer. It's a change in lifestyle which you will adapt to and treat as a regular day. To avoid this trap, make sure to keep your luxurious experiences rare. What's the point of a good meal if it doesn't make you feel good? Another thing we could spend our money on is other people. This might sound counterintuitive because when you think about spending money, you think about spending it on yourself. But studies have shown that when people spend money on others instead of themselves, they feel happier. And it doesn't matter how the money is spent. It can be a small gift or even a charitable donation. Neither does it matter how much of it was spent. It's the act of giving that has measure. Improving someone's day improves your day. Another good way to spend your money is to buy yourself more free time. If you're like the vast majority of people, you probably have a day job. This means that more than half of your day is spent on the commute and at work. However, people who spend most of their time working and trying to earn more money tend to enjoy their lives less. Likewise, people who have more time for themselves report enjoying their life much more even if they don't earn as much. This is because doing something voluntarily because you enjoy it and not because you have to do it increases happiness while avoiding adaptation effects. Whether it's gardening, roller skating, or writing a novel, it's good to dedicate at least some of your time to a hobby you enjoy. So if you have the option to reduce your working hours and still get through the month with less money, this can be a good investment for your day-to-day happiness. And instead of thinking about it like a pay cut, you can think of it as quote-unquote buying more time. However, this doesn't necessarily apply to everyone, as some people derive meaning and purpose from their job. and a lot of them don't even know which hobbies would make them happier. Which brings me to my next point. Instead of spending your money on things or experiences that would make you happy, you can use it to minimize whatever makes you unhappy. You probably already know what you dislike and makes you miserable, but I'll list 2 things I believe are worth striving to minimize. One of them is noise. Living in a noisy environment is something we don't ever truly adapt to, especially if the noise varies and comes in waves. If you're living next to a busy street, moving somewhere quiet would probably increase your happiness. Or you could buy noise-cancelling headphones. Either way, it's worth trying to remove sources of noise from your life. The other thing is commuting. Most commutes are filled with heavy traffic and people tend to end up with higher levels of stress. If possible, buy a home closer to your daily destination, or look for a way to change your work hours in a way that will allow you to avoid the rush hour traffic. Anyhow, try to find a way to avoid this major source of misery. Of course, what we find frustrating differs from person to person. Therefore, you will need to think about your own source of unhappiness and see if you can use your money to reduce your exposure to it. So, to sum it up, does money buy happiness? Will more money make you happier? I don't know, you tell me. As you've seen, it's not a simple yes or no answer. It really depends on the individual, the situation they're in, and how they're spending their money. In some cases, money does make us happier, while in other cases, it doesn't. Hopefully, you now have a better understanding of the relationship between money and happiness. I believe it's worth examining your own situation with all this information in mind and then decide for yourself if chasing more money is worth your time, or if perhaps you would get more happiness from somewhere else. As always, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something new today and you became better than yesterday.